Hey everyone, it's Dane. Today I'm going to be working on a new Game Boy Advance for Radar Scope 1 over at Retro Game Boards. Now he wanted me to put this in an awesome new Boxy Pixel aluminum shell. Those things are super cool. We're going to be putting a new IPS LCD panel in here. We're also going to be hooking up a audio amp, which will make this thing bump. And I think I'm also going to be doing a full recap on this thing too. So this should be a lot of fun. I've done a couple of Game Boys before. I've done like some of the HDMI kits for these, which are super cool. But I have yet to do one of these aluminum shells. So I'm looking forward to doing this. Let's get to it. All right, first things first, let's go ahead and do a quick functionality test. Just turn it on, make sure that this thing works. Audio. Now these screens didn't have any lighting. Still nice screens, but without any sort of lighting, it definitely made it difficult to see under most circumstances. Right now I have really bright shop lights in here, which makes this a little bit easier to read. But when we put one of these IPS panels in here, you'll be able to play this thing in the dark. All right, so disassembly on these is really not too bad. You're gonna need a tri-wing tip. And let me see, that is gonna be a tri-wing 00. And you're gonna need a size 0 Phillips head screwdriver as well. So yeah, all you do is you pull the lid off the battery compartment, set that aside. I always like to have a new little bin for any project I'm working on. It just helps keep things organized. And yeah, then we're just gonna remove all of this Phillips head here, then it comes apart. It's pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and get on that. Oops. That's simple. All right, we set our shells, aside. Now we have 1, 2 screws that are holding the motherboard in place. We're also going to lift up on these tabs here and disconnect the screen ribbon cable. A pair of these bent needle nose pliers really handy. I use these things all the time, especially for extracting screws. It's great. And that is all it takes to get the motherboard. All right, we have a few more pieces that we're going to harvest that's going to go into our Boxy Pixel shell later. So one of the things that we're going to need is this metal plate here. We're also going to go ahead and take our shoulder buttons, put those aside. We're going to need our power button, that. And there's also an LED diffuser in here that we're going to need for the power light. Need this guy right here. You definitely don't want to lose that piece. All right, now before we get too far into this, I think one of the first things you always want to do on this is do your recap and then check it before you start doing more mods. You know, with this, I have a dehum kit, but it doesn't make sense to put that on there until I've already done my recap, right? Same for the power amp. So first things first, we are going to pull all these SMD caps and replace it with our new capacitor kit. So the way that I usually like to remove SMD caps like this is basically just to heat up one side, lift, heat up the other, and pull it off. So let's go ahead and start with this big one right here. All right, here we go. You know what? I think I'm going to add just a little bit of solder to that pad. It'll just help me make sure I get that molten the way that it needs to. Now, when you're working on a handheld system like this, they're pretty tight. So just be mindful of the edge of your soldering iron. You know, you don't want to go melting plastic elsewhere. Here we go. Here's one side. And there's the other. All right, so that's our 106 volt. Now on these, usually I pull one and replace. That's, for me, that's just kind of how I like to do these. These pads look fine. I'm going to do a quick cleanup. And I'm just going to reflow solder that's left on the pads. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so that was a 106 volt. What I'm going to do, while I'm thinking about it, grab a marker and mark the old caps. Should have done that first. Oops. That way when I put a new one on, I'll know the ones that are new. So we want this guy right here. This is a 100 microfarad 16 volt. I'm going to very quickly pre-tin this. You don't want to put like a ton of solder on there. You really don't want them to pop up super high or anything. Just the tiniest bit of flux on there. Just enough to make sure it'll stick easily. I even got a little more on there than I would necessarily like. It's no big deal. Just kind of come back in with your soldering iron and rapidly drag it across that leg. One side tack down, and the other. Adding just a little more flux, and just a little bit more solder. Looking good. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is button this back up, do a quick test, just make sure everything is good before moving on. All right, let's do our check and see if our recap worked. Okay, cool. I think we're good to go. All right, that's pretty much a full functionality test. It's all doing what it ought to. Okay, cool. So we are good to go for our recap. I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up for tonight because the next step we're going to do is cleaning up our audio and installing our audio amp. And for that, I'm still going to want to use this case before putting it in the super cool Boxy Pixel case. But yeah, so that's going to be the next thing. But I think this is a pretty good one for tonight. For disassembly, recap, and test, and we are ready to move on to some more of the fun stuff next time. So anyway, thanks for being here with me. Always appreciate a like and a subscribe and all that stuff. And we'll see you next time when we start doing the audio stuff. Have a good one.